Good morning. You might know me as the second-string defensive nose on the football team, or the guy who plays all the characters in the school plays, or maybe as the really obnoxious kid who plays 80s music and the score from Star Wars on his little portable speaker. I go by many descriptions, but I hope none of them include the words predictable or boring. And I most certainly do not want anyone to say that I am never truly myself. I try to stay as unpredictable and unboring as possible. The predictable thing to do is to write a chapel talk specifically designed to get a decent grade and then forget about the whole thing within a week. That's not what I'm going to do, because sometimes you just have to make memories at the expense of grades. This idea was first introduced to me by my father when I was in 6th grade. One mid-February week, my grandparents came all the way from Spokane, Washington to come visit us, which is quite a rare occasion. Now, I have the good fortune of having relatively young, healthy grandparents, and my grandpa loves to play basketball, especially with his grandchildren. When I got home from school, he was ready to play with my sister, my dad, and me, and they had waited several hours for me to get home. But when they asked if I was ready to play, I responded truthfully, "Sorry guys, but I have a ton of homework." My dad then said to me, "All right, Ricky, but think about this. 20 years from now, are you going to remember doing your English homework, or are you going to remember playing basketball with your grandpa?" And you know what? I did go play basketball with my grandpa. So, Mr. Bowen, if you wanted to know why I turned in my vocab work late, now you know. This lesson applied to me again just last year. I decided, perhaps in a moment of insanity, to sign up for AP Chemistry. Now, most people join AP classes to look good on college transcripts, but I joined for a very different reason. I knew what has been described as your daily 45-minute dose of suffering would likely hurt my overall GPA. But I joined because I love science, and I joined for the experience, not for the grade. If you can love something even if it pushes you to borderline criminal insanity, then you find who you are. I would have never been able to find my true love of science if all I cared about was the grade. The same thing applies to extracurricular activities. It's really easy to come to school at 8 a.m., leave at 3:30 p.m., and just study and do homework every waking moment, weekends included, and dedicate your entire life to a 103 GPA. But what do you sacrifice? If you want this lifestyle, you can't do what you love. You can't do the core, sports, clubs, the play, or generally enjoy your last couple years of adolescence. Yeah, you get your 103, but to be honest, there really isn't a huge difference between a 103 and a 93. You've heard a billion times before that you aren't just a number. But the other half of that statement should be that numbers do not define you. No one cares what fraction of a percent you are smarter than anyone else, but they do care who you are. Be true to yourself, not to some arbitrary grade. Do what you want. Join as many clubs as you want. Do sports. Enjoy your high school experience. I mean, don't skip out on school because grades are still important, but don't sweat the small numbers. My grades aren't dreadful, but they're certainly not the best. But you know what? I did football, track, the play, the core, the clubs, the special teams, and took gambles on AP classes. Because when I'm old and senile, I'm not going to remember a bunch of stupid numbers, but I will remember everything I did. It's not in some arbitrary numbers you discover who you are, but it is in experiences that you find yourself. And that brings us to this chapel talk. As pretty much all of you know, every single senior is required to give a chapel talk and must follow certain guidelines in order to receive a decent grade for said talk. As I was thinking over the summer about what I would write about, it dawned on me that in order to receive a good grade on this thing, it would limit me to a boring speech about how I have emotional issues or how I learned so much from sports or something. But I didn't want to babble on about something I didn't really care about. I wanted to remember this day, not just the grade I will eventually get for it. So in order to practice what I preach, I didn't write a talk that would guarantee a good grade. Rather, I wrote a piece that meant something to me and be something that I will remember. At this point, most seniors will end their talk with a quote. Now, I was advised to pick a quote that would go with my talk for a better grade, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to quote Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones. I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough, irritating, and it gets everywhere. Peace out, TMI.